we have Garrett, Sam, David, and Tim, and they're going to tell you about themselves right now.
My name is Garrett G. I'm from Provo, Utah. I'm currently a student at Brigham Young University there. I play for the soccer team there, and I guess I'll tell the short story. I guess 2 years ago, had an idea for the company that I'm now running called Scan, and at the time I had the idea, I did not have the skills or the know-how on how to execute on it, and I came across somehow, some way, Drew Wilson's blog. He told a story about how it was called Build It With Me, how he had the idea for it, and 48 hours it came to life. And I was insanely impressed that he was able to do that, insanely jealous that he had the capabilities to do that. And that's kind of what sparked my, I guess, inspiration and motivation to take the idea for Scan, which was I wanted to take digital actions that exist and enable them in the real world. So a real world Facebook-like, a Pinterest pin, a buy now button, stuff like that. And basically what that has evolved to was starting off with QR codes, barcodes, other mobile scanning technologies, and then hopefully working to the overall vision. And that's what I'm working on now, called Scan.
I'm Sam Soffes. I live in Kentucky right now. I was in San Francisco for 2 years, and I'm moving back in a couple months, so it's kind of a weird hiatus from San Francisco. I work at a company called Seesaw. I'm the first employee over there. There's like 8 of us now. It's a social, polling app. We just launched in February. And before that, I made an app called Cheddar. Hopefully you've heard of it. Probably not, but it's a to-do list that's kind of cool. And before that, I was at Hipstamatic, so it was a good time. So yeah.
Hi, I'm David Keegan. I work at a startup up in Newport Beach called Sign Now for signing documents. So if you have to sign any lease agreements or contracts or anything, you can just do it right on your iPad or iPhone or Android web. And originally from Connecticut, but I've been in California for almost 10 years now. And I also have a couple side project apps. I have a Play-by-Play, which is a Dribble Mac client, and then some iOS ones. I guess the latest one I've been working on is Notable. It's like a contacts app replacement that focuses on the notes field of the contacts. So you can write down all sorts of information about people, full screen note instead of the little note that's in the default contacts app. So that's me.
And I'm Tim Mather, co-founder and designer for Untapped, which is a social check-in and discovery network for beer enthusiasts. I'm also a UX designer at Disney. So Untapped is basically just a, like I said, discovery app for beer. My partner and I had this idea around, we like social media, we like location-based apps, we like discovery. So we kind of just took all these ideas one day and just threw it into something that we both loved, which obviously was beer. And just kind of spawned from there and turned into something that we've just been working on for a couple years now, and growing and expanding and just building out across as many platforms as we possibly can.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Before we get into the questions, I just want to ask a similar question as last time. How do you guys first get into, or what led you up to the point of developing the apps that you guys are a part of right now? What brought you from regular humanness to the developer portion and the building portion? So anyone who wants to take it first, go ahead.
Well, I was going to go first, but I have to think of the answer. I didn't really think that far. Well, a long time ago, I was in 5th grade, and there was a free HTML class from my local ISP, which is no longer a thing that people do. And I was like, hey, this is pretty cool. And yeah. Then in high school, I played with some Mac stuff, and the iPhone came out, and I was like, oh, I can carry around apps I make instead of on my computer, so that's pretty cool. And then I've been doing iOS since then, I guess. So it's not that exciting.
So yeah, I got started kind of in web design development stuff, yeah, probably like 10th grade, and because I was really into video editing, so I did video editing also, and got into computer graphics, like 3D CG stuff, and then so started programming specifically for the 3D program Maya that I was using to build 3D models and stuff, and then came to California to work in animated feature films, and then was at Blizzard for 5 years doing development there. And on the side, bought my girlfriend at the time a Mac, and then started using it, and was like a Mac hater. And started using it, I was like, man, this is amazing, and then started programming for the Mac, and then the iPhone SDK came out. And because I used my Blizzard email address to sign up, I got accepted into the beta. So I didn't realize that was going to happen, but that was pretty cool. So I had an app on the App Store the day it launched, which was nice. And then almost a year and 1 month ago, I left Blizzard to join this startup and do iOS full time.
So I've always had an interest in web and technology, I think, as probably everyone here has, and it was always just something that interested me, and so I got into the idea of just making GeoCities HTML websites back in the day, and that kind of sparked my interest into, hey, I can create something and put it out there for the world to see pretty much instantly. I have a very strong design background. That's actually what I went to school for, so I basically went to school and did a lot of print design, very little web design, surprisingly. And along the way, I decided to teach myself front-end development, and just started kind of learning how to design for web. And then as I grew my front-end skills, I was kind of able to become this sort of hybrid of I can design and build. And so that's what I did for a long time. And then when mobile devices started coming out and catching on, I started thinking, okay, well, what do we do here? How do we handle this? And so that kind of got me into just figuring out how do you take these things that you design and translate them down into a mobile area. Started with the mobile-only sites, and then kind of more recently learning how to deal with responsive and all that good stuff. But as I got my first iPhone, I remember going and just picking it up and being super excited about it and thinking, hey, there are all these cool things on here, and just always had an interest in apps. And I never really, I'd worked on building web apps, but never really mobile apps. And so just started thinking, okay, well, what can we make? And my partner and I ended up having this idea for Untapped, and it was really our first major dive into creating any sort of really vast market mobile app, which really just started out as something, what can we make, what's fun, what would we use? And we didn't really know what was going to happen, if it was going to catch on, if people would actually care, and thankfully they did, and it kind of grew from there. And that's really just my background, kind of sparked from design to development, and just I jump back and forth. I love both sides of it. I love the visual, I love the digital, being able to create, being able to program, and then, as was discussed before, being able to take your vision from your head to the internet, and being able to do that all yourself without having to explain or rely on someone else is just very helpful.
Awesome, thank you. So we'll open up for questions. Would anybody like to go first? And shall be raised. Okay, I'll go first. So all of you guys have apps in the Mac App Store or the iOS App Store. How do you decide, like when you're making an app, you come up with an idea, how do you decide if you make an app free versus paid? I think that's a question a lot of people have.
Go ahead.
I think it really depends on what your goal is. Like I have an app called Shares that's like a stock app. It just shows you really simply like how much you've made or lost. And it's free because it was selling like a little bit, and I'd rather have like a ton of people have my app and think that I'm awesome versus like $200. Like I would gladly pay $200 for a bunch of people to think I'm awesome. So that one's free because like I don't really care like about a little bit of money. And then my other app, Cheddar, is free because it's freemium, so you can like pay to upgrade, which has been kind of a mixed success. But yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on, like Seesaw is also free because we want a bunch of people to use it. And right now our company value is in users and not like, you know, a couple $100. So, yeah.
I think, like he said, you got to figure out your goal first, whether it's coolness and popularity or if it's the finance side of things. And even if it is the finance side of things, there's a lot of cool data and science out there about if you put an app out for $1, if you put it out for $3, which one's more popular, but which one grosses more profit in the end. And then in-app sales, obviously. And so I think once you figure out what your actual goal is, and then just follow the data there.
Yeah, a goal is definitely the big thing because it really depends on what it is that you're trying to do with your app. There are developers that will just, you create an app and you put it out there and that's it. It's just that app. Or if you're creating a larger thing like we were doing with Untapped where we wanted to create more of a network, we wanted the users, so we decided to put it out there for free because we had this larger vision around creating not just one app, but an app, a network that provided us with other means to have that income. And so by putting the app out there for free and getting the users on board, that gave us the popularity that we needed to start actually justifying the other avenues that we were planning to take.
So I've never released an app just for free on the App Store, and the App Store to me was so appealing because it completely got rid of all of the payment processing stuff. So I released some Mac apps before the Mac App Store existed, and I just gave them away for free and like open sourced them and stuff. But then when the Mac App Store came out, it's such an amazing thing that you just put an app up there, and you don't have to worry about the servers, you don't have to worry about the credit card transaction. So I don't know, that's just always been really appealing to me to be able to take advantage of that. And I mean, the apps I have aren't really expensive. Like most of them are 99 cents, so I'm not charging an arm and a leg for them. But I have also been experimenting with like in-app purchases, and I don't know if it's better. But my latest iOS app, Notable, I released for 99 cents at first, and then I switched to in-app purchases to unlock like additional features, and I can't really tell from the numbers whether that's been a good move or not, but it seems like a good move. I don't know, in some ways, because you are almost, I feel like I'm offering a trial of the app for people to try it out before they buy, because iOS doesn't have like a demo model. But it can also be seen as like, you're trying to nickel and dime people. So yeah, it definitely really depends. But yeah.
Awesome. Back there, all right. Snipes has a question.
So I'm curious how much, if any, unit testing you guys do, or like beta testing, or how you know when you're ready to release your app.
So with Scan, we're pretty, this makes us sound bad, but we should definitely do a lot more than we do. Our user base is now to about 40 million, and our user base of testers before we put out an update is maybe like 30 to 40 people, and they use it depending on the rush, whether it's for 3 whole weeks or 3 whole days. Anyways, that's definitely an area where we're still learning and trying to get better at.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure why. Maybe because it's just hard to, like, I think iOS apps and Mac apps are more like UI driven, so it's kind of hard to test that because it's more about the user interaction. There are some ways of doing it. You can script it through JavaScript and things, but yes, I don't think I've ever unit tested an Objective-C code. But as far as like other forms of testing, for my personal apps, I don't really test them that much aside from like friends. But for Sign Now, where I work, we test very extensively, not with unit testing of the Objective-C code, but of user testing. So before we release the app, we put it through a couple cycles through services like UTest or user test. and get feedback there. And then also, as we're developing features, we'll bring in people like on a weekly basis, like several people a week, to try the app and see how like the flows are working, how the messages are working, and things like that. So it's a really like polished user experience, and that drives kind of the direction a lot. But I know that doesn't answer the unit testing question, but yeah.
Same, but it's a little bit the same for us. Since we're just two guys building apps, a lot of it's just based on beta testing. So we recruited a good number of our most active users and put them in groups to test the various apps that we put out. So we'll make improvements, and then we use TestFlight, which is very good, very easy to put out these development cycles. So we'll make some changes. We'll throw it up. We'll say there's a new release, download it. We'll let them play with it for a week or two, depending obviously on how big of an update it is. If it's something very targeted and we can just say, hey, we need you to test this one feature, then it's pretty quick. If it's an overhaul, then a few weeks to give them enough time to play with it. With iOS, it's been through TestFlight. Before, when we released Android updates, that was usually just uploading the APK file, which got really hairy. So now that TestFlight actually handles Android, we're using that. And then with Windows Phone, their store actually allows you to put an app up, but keep it limited to certain user sign-in. So it's almost like a beta testing built into their store. And that's been really interesting to kind of play with, because we didn't have to worry about any third-party software or anything like that. We make changes, throw it up, and the people who we allowed into the beta would be able to just go in like any other app and download it and test it out.
I'm just curious, how many people are developers? Okay, well, I'll keep my answer shorter then. So, yeah, like you were saying, it's most like mobile apps especially are very UI driven. So like if you had a system to test that like really well, then you wouldn't really have to test it, because then the computer could understand like the interaction. So like I've done some scripting with like KIF, which is a great tool by Square, but it's so hard to keep all that stuff up to date, because if you make any like UI changes, like all your tests break, you have to go fix them all, and you end up spending more time fixing your test than actually fixing your code that your test found was broken. So some stuff a unit test, like complicated like logic that's actually unit testable, but in practice, most of the complex logic is UVU stuff and not like just pure logic. But then on the web, like I test the crap out of everything in Ruby and in JavaScript. Just there's not great tools for iOS, and it's just like so time consuming. I'd rather just like ship it and find bugs later and fix them. So at Seesaw, we filled up our entire Apple. Like you get 100 devices, so we have like a bunch of our like VIP users get early copies, and internally we send out builds like multiple times a day. And if anyone finds a bug, like they'll just report it, and we get it fixed like in the same day. So like the quick iterations, I think, is the best way versus like spending a ton of time on something and then like, okay, put it out and like hope nothing's broken, versus like constantly iterating, I think is a better approach.
Hi there. Yeah, I was just wondering, recently at Google I/O, they announced that in the developer console, you'll be able to do like free localizations, where like, you just send a text string and you'll get, that query back translated. And I just wondered where you guys were on that, because personally, I just feel like all I can think about is some broken button with a really long translated string.
So we've started building a user base outside of the U.S., and localization is something that's come up and been asked of us. Our apps are basically hybrid, so our apps are built on PhoneGap as the base, and so being able to do language packs or translations via the JavaScript in the apps is something that we can do, and being able to link into like a Google API to automatically translate it is also possible, because since it's just basically built on web frameworks, we can tie into that. But my biggest fear is what if these translations aren't right? I would rather have a native speaker do localizations and take longer and make sure that they're perfect than risk some computer throwing in the wrong accent mark and infuriating an entire continent.
So at Hipstamatic, we hired translators, like on the other side of this, we hired translators to do like 18 languages in like our top several countries, basically all the ones the App Store supports. And it was really expensive and it took a really long time. And anytime we make any changes, we have to like wait like super long, like weeks to get it back. It was like really hard to communicate with them because like they're based out of UK, but all the translators are like in other countries, right? So it's like days before we could get any feedback because it's like one day to UK and then another day, like because of time zones. And it turns out like Hipstamatic had very fun like, holy free holies, someone liked your thing, or like really like funny things. Or one was like, your friends are lame because you don't have any. It was like you don't have any friends. It was like your friends are lame. You should get them to sign up. And it turns out in German it was like death to your friends. It was something like super offensive. And we were getting like tons of 1-star reviews because it was like, you know, we're like telling them their friends are the worst or something. I don't know. Something that just didn't translate at all. So like translation's really hard, even if you hire someone. And I think if Google does it, just like automated, it would be, I can't imagine. Because like we had some, like we didn't have time for translators, so I wrote a little script to just like go Google Translate all the ones we were missing. And like it definitely shows in the reviews in those countries, like that release is like, what does this even say? And I'm like, yeah, we know, it was Google. But I mean, if it works well, then I think it's like the best thing ever for Android, and I'm super jealous. But I'm not optimistic.
Most of us only know you guys through your successes, your product successes, and I was wondering if any of you would like to share any of your like product failures and maybe things that you learned from that.
I don't know. I kind of consider all of my personal projects failures. I mean, I like that. Well, I guess I'll take that back. Like, I don't know. I want to be able to live off of, like, I want to be an indie developer and live off of what I'm making, and none of my products are anywhere near that level. And I like the way that they look and the work that I've put into them, definitely. But yeah, I don't know.
My co-founder and I, we've worked together on several different apps in the past that are all just sitting out there doing something. I probably haven't looked at any of them in months. And there's a couple of things. On the first project we did together, which was kind of like an all-in-one Twitter app back in the day, like I want to say kind of like a TweetDeck before TweetDeck, where you could have the photos and grouping and all that stuff. So we built this thing, and that's actually what started us working together. And this was before either of us had really built any major apps, and so we didn't really understand the process of how to go about making sure that we didn't overwrite each other's changes every time. So there was lots of FTP overriding and just wondering where everything went. So one big thing we learned from that is version control is key, absolutely key. And then another big thing is, when you go about projects, one of the big failures that we ran into was just plain losing interest in what we were doing. So making sure that what you're doing is something that holds your interest, something that you have some sort of a passion in. For us with Untapped and how we've kind of stuck with it is it's something that we use, something that we wanted for ourselves, which happened to translate into, a larger appeal. And keeping that interest in what you're doing is very important. And like I said, a lot of apps that we've done have been failures because we just gave up.
Yeah, I guess I want to add to my answer also and echo that. Yeah, I think the only failures I guess I really would consider I've had is things that I haven't shipped or launched, and most of them have been with working with other people, which is not that the people I've worked with have been amazing, but once you kind of add other people, then both people have to stay interested in the project, and keeping that interest high is pretty hard to do, and so yeah. I think trying to figure out ways of keeping people interested and inspired by what you're working on is really key.
Yeah, I guess all mine are failures too, because I still have a job. But so like Shares was this app I did in a weekend because I just wanted to, like I bought some Apple stock at a really good time, and that was great. But anyway, I wanted to see how much money I was making because it was like doing so well, and I threw this app together. And I was like having lunch with my friend Josh Brewer, and he's like, "Oh, we could make this thing." I was like trying to tell him what I was trying to do, and I just wasn't capable design-wise. He's like, "Oh, like well, we should do this together." I was like, "Yeah, amazing," because you're like a spectacular designer. We put it out there, and we were like really excited about it. And it's like, well, most people don't have stocks, so that was a bad idea. It was like number 2 in the finance category when we launched it, with 100 downloads. It was like, I'm in the wrong category. So like that was a really bad move. And we just made it free, and like a lot of people downloaded it now that it's free. And I get emails all the time like, I love this app. Please update it for iPhone 5. And I was like, well, I sold all my stocks, so I don't really want to work on it anymore. So yeah, there's that. And I guess Cheddar failed sort of. Like it was really great for a bit, and people liked it. And then I ran out of money, and I had to get a job. I did it full time for 5 months, which was amazing. It was like some of the best time of my life. I think the core reason it failed was like lack of focus and trying to do too much. I launched with iPhone, iPad, the web, and an open API, and then added a Mac app, which is a ton of stuff for one person to design and develop all of it, and like support and marketing, and it was intense. And from the beginning, I had all these plans to do like shared lists and stuff, so like charge businesses, because businesses will pay me all kinds of money, and like an individual is like not going to pay $20 a month. That's ridiculous for like a to-do list. I don't know how much Wunderlist costs, so I'm sorry if that's how much it costs. Anyway, but like I was like, no, I got to get all the apps done first before I can like charge stuff. And had I just like, pulled back my desire to like have fun and like go make things and like worked on the business, I think it would have done a little better. I guess that's it for most of my products. It's like I just want to have fun and not deal with that stuff. I don't know.
So I don't have as much experience as these guys. Scan is my first and only app, and so I don't know. I guess it depends how you define success. I've been really grateful for any sort of success that Scan has come across. I remember when I first put it into the App Store and it went live, I was so excited about it. I was taking screenshots of my phone, and I would like take it at like 11:55, but then I would take it also at like midnight because it looked good with like the perfect like 12 o'clock across the top. So I just like kept taking screenshots of it. And then I went to a party and I was telling everybody to download it, and I think I got 12 people to download it, and I thought that was good success. And so I went back to my co-founders. I was like, guys, 12 downloads, like we're off to a good start. But then they showed me analytics, and the first day it got a lot more than 12 downloads. And so I don't know. I've really liked, again, whatever little success Scan has come across. That's the good side. The bad side is if app number 2 for me doesn't get its 40 million downloads in a year and a half, then I'll consider that a failure. So my success gauge is kind of going crazy right now.
Hey, back here. I love Untapped, so hey, great. Hope you enjoyed the beer last night, if you were here. So can you guys talk a little bit more about, so Cheddar was free, Seesaw's free, Untapped appears to be free on all aspects of it. The stock app was free, Hipstamatic was free for a long time until they started charging, I think, for filters, or was it always charging?
It was always paid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, do you like if Scan gets like millions of users and it's still free? Can we talk about money a little bit? And like, what products could have been like continued on? Could you still be developed, or could have gotten, could still be living right now? Like, had you charged from? Do you have any regrets about not charging for products a certain time? I mean, you mentioned that that you just really like working on these products without having to really worry about business model or things like that. Is that okay, or do you have like regrets about this? And you said like, okay, well, I still have a job, so I consider them all failures. I mean, do you really feel like that, or do you guys? Can we talk about money a little bit and like how it fits into like the ability to design things and be an entrepreneur and build things? Yeah.
So I think I've had an interesting path, and I've just kind of like felt along the way and learned along the way. When we built Scan, we had set the goal. We wanted in 1 year to have 1 million downloads and have made somehow, some way, $5,000 off it. And I thought that was doable. Anyways, and it was about 3 months into Scan being live in the App Store that it hit its first 1 million downloads. And honestly, there just must be some sort of sensor that the second we passed 1 million downloads, we started getting hit up by investors. And I didn't know how to work with investors. I didn't know who they were. I had seen the TV show Shark Tank, and according to that, they're jerks. So for a long time, I just kind of ignored them, didn't return phone calls or emails until Google Ventures contacted us, and I knew that name, and so we called them back. And so flash forward, we ended up doing a deal with Google Ventures, the owner of the Boston Celtics, Lady Gaga, a few other investors, and raised, I guess, a total of $8.7 million from them. And so from that, the good side has been we have this financial freedom where I don't think about finances in my personal life. We can pay ourselves a salary from that. We still have a very small team. There's just 7 of us. And we really have no costs but our salaries. And so that's really where the funding is going towards. And then we have that, since that's set aside, now we just have this entrepreneurial and creative freedom to go try to make something special of it. So that's been the good side. Looking back, I think that's not the most ideal path. I think the ultimate is when you can create something so valuable that it immediately funds itself, has that same financial success, excluding the investors. But I can say from my personal experience, it's definitely been really, sincerely nothing but a positive experience for me, having worked with the investor and VC path.
So Hipstamatic, I wasn't there from the beginning, but they launched as a $2 app and got featured immediately. It was right around Christmas, and for the App Store, Christmas is it's Christmas. It's spectacular. The day after Christmas, everyone gets their devices, and it's the App Store is just ridiculous. It's usually everyone's biggest day, hands down. I'm sure yeah. Anyway, so they just exploded, and now they made all this money and they don't know what to do with it, so they hired some people, and I was one of the first people they hired after they moved to San Francisco and all that. And I found out they made $12 million a year before. So I was holy crap, this is so much money for an app. They own their own building in Soma, downtown San Francisco, which is unheard of for any startup to own their building and make money. It's a weird they make money? What? You're doing it wrong. It's people don't understand. They're no, we're not a startup. We're a company because we make money. And they're I don't know if that's okay. It's hilarious because they charge for things, which is kind of having a business. Imagine that. And I'd worked at startups before that were super took millions and millions and millions in investment and hoped to get bought by somebody, and that was the whole business model. And I was this is so stupid. I work at a company that makes money. You guys, I've moved up. So then I quit my job and decided to do Cheddar. And so from the beginning, I charged for things from day one, and that was really important to me. Because it's this is a business. This isn't a startup. I'm going to make money. And then I didn't make very much money. So it's well, San Francisco is an expensive place to live. This is not going to work. And I tried to get investment, and that was really hard, and I didn't get any. Because someone that's the first time with no co-founder, no one wants to take a chance on one guy. So I was well, Instagram just sold for $1 billion. That's a lot of money. Maybe I'll get a job at a company that's playing the startup game and see how that works. Because I'd never done a small company before, being employee number 1. So my founders had previously sold a company called CoTweet, which they made a ton of money on. So like, well, I'll try that. So that's my current take on money is, I don't know, the game works for some people, and some people it's like, they just get destroyed. So I don't know. I'll give it a try.
So with money, so I guess sorry, I didn't know where to start. I guess like one thing is probably like kind of thinking about what your goals are. Like it definitely would be great if I could live off of the money I made from my personal apps and I was my own boss and everything like that. But they have also definitely opened a lot of doors. Like I'm on this panel, and like that's how I met Drew. Because I don't know if you remember, but I sent Drew an email like several years ago. Like, hey, I'm in the area. Like I would just join Dribble. Hey, I'm in the area. Like I'd love to meet up. He's like, yeah, sure. And then like never heard from him again. And then I released Play by Play. And because now I have a
had
product.
lunch with you.
No, after.
Oh.
No, I'm not. No, this is not. No, I'm not trying to like, say anything bad about Drew. It's just that because I had no street cred at the time, and so but because of all these personal apps I released and everything like that, I was able to I have something like, it's like I have street cred, so I'm able to So I'm not making money off of them, but I'm able to kind of meet people and yes. So
There's huge value in
Yeah.
that. Like your personal brand is huge.
Yeah. So yeah. I guess that's what I'm going for. Yeah, personal brand, like being able to get that. So.
I did have lunch with him, and I went to his work, and I saw his desk.
Yes. Yeah. Drew is awesome.
So from our perspective, we don't have any regrets on not charging for our apps because when we went into creating the company, we had already kind of thought through some other options of ways to basically monetize it. And so by focusing on these other areas of the business as a whole, we were able to avoid needing to actually charge the user in order to get on board, because really, we want as many people in the community as possible, because that's what really keeps us running and keeps us driving. And so that was the big point for us. We did late last year launch basically pro accounts on the service, and that's been helping. And then we also work with breweries, and they've worked with us in terms of promotions. And so we've been able to take these other revenue models and turn them into enough funding to keep our company running with enough runway for a while. It is still part-time for both of us, so we still have a day job, and we do this on the side as a passion for now. And hopefully as it grows and as we get traction and continue to work out these other areas that we want, someday it'll allow us to flip over. I think one piece, in terms of regrets on charging or not charging, I think one piece is if you do go the larger route of not just specifically an app but trying to do a larger network or something like that, one big thing is trying to figure out the balance of the user level versus the business level, and figuring out how to balance that out, because obviously you want your users to be happy and you want as many users on the platform as you can, so you tend to focus a lot on the interfaces and on the apps and making sure that everything's functioning properly. And then sometimes you neglect the business side, which is where you're supposed to actually make the money. So you got to balance those out to make sure that you keep the users happy and keep new stuff coming out, but you're also building these extra features that are actually going to make you some sort of an income. And being a two-man team, finding that time balance has been kind of difficult, but we're working through it.
I have a question. Do you guys think, just from your experience, do you think it's okay to make something without the desire or intention to turn it into a business?
Oh, definitely. With creation, from the previous panel, just being able to create is very important. I mean, you don't have to go into it looking to make money, especially if you're just going to create you have a concept for some app and you want to make it and put it out there just because it's cool and you think people will like it. I completely support that.
Yeah, I feel pretty powerfully about that as well. I almost feel like that's the necessity, and if somebody starts a product you know, with the sole intention of wanting to have a business, then they're just setting themselves up for failure.
I spend a ton of time and resources on open source things, just because it's fun and I like it, and I like giving back to everyone. And if it helps someone, then awesome. And if not, whatever. I had fun with it. But yeah, I totally agree. Like, you know, if all you're doing is like developing or designing just to make money, I think that's kind of like you're missing like the fun part. So like just have fun and make something, even if like, you know, no one likes it or no one whatever, you just had fun making it. Like there's value in that because you learn things along the way and got better at your craft. And there's huge value in that.
Does anybody have a question? I guess no. One of the other things I want to ask is, how much does coverage help? Like, because on the iOS App Store and the Mac App Store, Apple has a couple of different ways that they offer coverage. And then also, of course, there's like the tech blogs and other blogs. Like, how much does coverage help, like from your app, like sales, downloads, exposure, brand, all that stuff? And then also, like, how have you guys gone about securing that and all that jazz?
With Scans, so Scans available, at least on mobile, for Windows, Android, and iOS. On any given day, we get about 50,000 installs on iOS, and on days where we've been featured, that'll bump up maybe 3 to 4 times that. Whereas Android, we get about 25,000 on any given day. But when they featured us, I think they have like one main feature spot. I don't have an Android device, so it's just my friends telling me about it. But you could actually turn on your phone, and like the first thing you'd see is like a promoted app. And when they did that for us, we in one weekend had 6.5 million installs. So Android has a pretty powerful feature system.
Yeah, I'd say that it's huge. Like to be featured on a blog is huge, and in my experience, with Play-by-Play, I was on a couple of blogs, and then also featured on the Mac App Store, New and Noteworthy, and also apps for Mountain Lion, and they were both about comparable, and I don't have huge download numbers, so for me it was like a 10x multiplier, and so yeah, it's huge to be on there, and yeah, and at the time I didn't really know this, but a lot of people are talking about it now, that getting featured by Apple a lot is like using their new technologies, and so I did an update for Play-by-Play that added Mountain Lion notifications and their sharing menu and things, and just because I thought it was super cool, and they just released it, and then later I learned out that like that's what they look for, like a lot of the time in apps, is apps that show off their new technologies and stuff. So that made a huge difference in download numbers.
I'll echo that coverage is everything. I think especially if you aren't in a position with, you know, if you're a startup or just an app or something that isn't making, you know, going back again a little bit to money, if you aren't making anything, you're not going to be able to have a marketing budget to go out and, you know, again, apps don't really, unless you're a big player, you're not really having much in terms of traditional media advertising anyway. So we rely on the tech world. I know when we first launched our apps, they were mobile web apps, because at the time we hadn't really made that jump into the hybrid. So we literally were just a mobile web app. It worked for us because we could get on every device, every web-enabled device right away. And as soon as I remember sitting up one night and just looking at Twitter, kind of probably just looking for our app's name just to see what was going on, I saw a random tweet and there was a link, and I hit the link, and there we were on Mashable for the first time. And I called my buddy, my co-founder was back east, and I think it was like 3 a.m. his time, and he literally was just sitting there. This was before we had any sort of like back-end tools. He was just refreshing our database, our user database, just watching the numbers just skyrocket. It was insane. And then so there's the coverage part of the media, and that obviously make friends, make connections, try and get your app out to these outlets as much as possible. But something that we also noticed is that the app stores in general, just even being in an app store, being available is extremely helpful. For us, being a mobile web app, not many people really understand how to bookmark a site to their dashboard and open it in offline mode. And so that was a big, big hindrance for us to gain users. Additionally, you know, we lack technologies like being able to leave the app running and not have to restart it whenever you pull it back up like a web app does. And so, again, this was way back. This was early iOS 5, late iOS 4, so before they had any extra technologies. And so the day that we released we released Android and iOS on the same day. And if we look at our metrics over the course of our existence, you can just see it. Just the day we did that, we just started shooting up because you're in a store now. If somebody says, "Hey, go get Untapped," well, what are you going to tell them? Oh, you got to go to their website and then bookmark it to your dashboard, and then you access it that way. No, they're going to go to the App Store and look for the app. That's really all there is to it. The app culture is so built on these stores and these markets now that if it's not easily accessible, then you're missing out. And then I would also, I just say passionate community, getting the grassroots movement, getting people in on something that you're building. That's been a big thing for us too.
Just a quick ad. So Cheddar was featured on the Mac App Store for like a month, like right on the front page under the big banner. And it was like 20 downloads a day or something. It's like something like super depressing. Maybe it was like 40, 50. I don't know. Like under 100 for sure. Versus like when anything's featured on iOS, it's like, you know, thousands and thousands and thousands. I don't know if you saw the same with your stuff, but it's like not a lot of stuff. Like if you hit 1,000 a day in the Mac App Store, that's like a huge day.
Yeah, I think when I was featured, it was probably like 50 to 60 downloads a day.
Yeah, so the Mac's just like a kind of depressing platform right now. So, yeah.
Do you guys have any resources or like closing comments or tips for people who are building apps before we close out?
I'll throw out one little tidbit of secret sauce, take it or leave it. One thing that did really well for Scan from the beginning is, because we started it as college students, we didn't have money to do any marketing, so our idea was let's do whatever tricky stuff we can, but most importantly, let's try to create a product valuable enough that it'll market itself. But there was one little cool thing that we did intentionally, but it worked a lot better than we had thought. And it's this. So there's not really SEO for the App Store according to Apple, but like there really is. If you type in whatever type of app you're looking for, it'll first search names of the apps, then it'll actually search names of the business that made the app, and then it'll go through and find keywords and phrases within the summary. Anyway, so take, for example, Instagram. Their name of the app is Instagram. The name of the business is Bourbon, and then they have the summary. So Instagram, as big as they are, obviously doesn't have this problem. But in the early days of Instagram, if they did have this problem and they were trying to get more traction, instead of having the business name Bourbon, if they would have named the business photo sharing or photo filters or whatever of the sort, could have been a great help for them. And so this isn't something you should like go about in a spammy or taboo way and ruin it for the rest of us. But we launched Scan, or we used Google tools, found that if somebody's wanting to download a QR code app, the first most searched for term was QR code, and the second was Scan. We didn't want to limit ourselves to only QR codes. We wanted the name of the app to be Scan, but we benefited knowing that the other most searched for term was QR code. So if you go in the App Store, the name of our app is Scan. The name of our business is QR Code City LLC for the sole purpose of being more discoverable. So little tidbit there.
So in Seesaw, something we did that like really helped. We picked some like VIP featured users, or whatever they're called. And normally, if you just email someone like, "Hey, I want you to be like an all-star in my app," people are gonna be like, "Oh, cool, yeah, like all right." They're not gonna be like, "No, get away from me," because you're like telling them you think they're so great. So we picked people like that fit the space that have like 500,000 Pinterest followers, or like a huge readership on their blog. And that's been like really successful because they kind of just like promote our stuff without us even having to ask, just because we were like, hey, we'll feature you in our app because we think you're great. And they're like, cool. And they spread the word on all of their channels. And they're like, you know, they're a huge distribution. So that's been really great. It's like really easy to do. Just like, hey, you're featured, cool. And then like, oh, great. And like, go get all this free marketing.
I guess my main tip is probably, yeah, I guess it's more for kind of like bigger apps. Would be, like one thing we're doing a lot at Sign Now is automating our builds and stuff. And this is such a huge thing instead of having to like, because doing a build of an iOS app is actually like a pretty complicated thing, especially getting it on Hockey App or Test Flight with all like, you need like the DSIM files and like the provisioning and everything. And so if you're going to build an app that you're going to release a lot, I would say definitely look at like a build solution of being able to build like multiple targets for testers, beta testers, the App Store submission, and all of that stuff, because it helps so much that, because right now we can like push to a build, like build/test branch in GitHub, and then like 10 minutes later an email will go out to the whole team to like download that new app. And so it's so much better than having to spend like an hour getting like the build ready. I don't know, that's a pretty very nerdy tip, but that's something I found to be super helpful.
We do that too, it's great.
I'd say one tip that would come from us in our experience is there's been kind of a back and forth about the whole hybrid app idea of, you know, native versus hybrid. And, you know, I would say from our standpoint, don't be afraid of hybrid if it's a place to start. For us, we didn't have an iOS developer. We didn't really have the resources for one, but we were web developers. And as more designers start to become more of this hybrid idea of a designer-developer, you start gaining those skills to create a web app and being able to take that and create an actual hybrid app out of that and put that out there. You know, that's your first step. You can kind of consider that your V1. And then as, you know, you get the resources or as you get people on board that are kind of looking at it, you know, then you can start, you know, worrying about taking it to a fully native experience. And, you know, while there are advantages and disadvantages either way, it's just a good place to start. If you have an idea and you want an app and you just feel like you can't find an iOS developer or can't hire one, then it's a good place to start.
Great. Thank you, guys.